So what happens is that the door Revi then is against two Moshe. What is Moshe? The midas of Netzach, the midah of the eternity of the Jewish people. And until the Emori are decimated, now I would say Emori always is associated with the word Emor, which is words, right? And Moshe Rabbeinu essentially was given the dibros, was given the words. So their corruption is words of Torah versus words of destruction. Words of destruction include Lashon Hara, okay, Nivel Peh, okay, and in general, words that degrade and destroy. So they hadn't reached the full extent to which we were able and ready to replace them. Which means that as time goes on, we didn't really get rid of the Canaanim until who? Until David HaMelech, because he was the one that rid us of the Yevusi. So there's an entire spectrum, from Avram up until David HaMelech, we had to knock off each one of the 7 Amamim. Now, I can't go into detail now how those might match, but one thing we know for sure is that Avram is opposed by Ephron Achiti. There's proper chesed versus misguided or self-serving chesed, and somehow the Emori, which is the 4th generation, is connected Moshe Rabbeinu, which is the midas of Netzach. And he says, you got to wait until we're ready for that tikkun, because there's a job that Yitzchak has to do, there's a job that Yaacov has to do, and there's a job that Moshe will do, and he will prepare us for that entry. So one of the things we have to be very, very careful about is that we cannot be partners to be ma'akev the geula. If we are associating in midos, if our midos are wrong, if they are on the wrong end, then we are being ma'akev the geula the same way these 7 nations were ma'akev the geula. So therefore, you can begin to understand why the Chafetz Chaim was so adamant that the generation has to focus on what? Shmiras halashon. Because without Shmiras halashon, we cannot move ahead in the process of Geula. And because, why? Because there's Moriah and there's Machpelah. What is speech that, there's speech that divides, Machpelah, there's speech that unites, Moriah. What's speech that unites? Ketores, creating unity and harmony. That's really the avoda of Aaron HaKohen, Kira V'chokim, Shalom Bayis, all those words that create. I have a good Shalom Bayis story. One second. So, and then there's the Torah itself, which tells us how to live with people successfully and how to be kona the midos of Torah, and the Torah makes you into a mensch if you're learning it properly for the right reasons and not for the wrong reasons. And that's all against the dibur that's machalik, that creates kefel, that creates division, which is essentially lashon hara, machloket. Even they think of machloket l'shem shamayim. Machloket l'shem shamayim, that was only Hillel and Shammai. I'm sorry. But if there's any issue really going on, whether it's in money or space or time or property, whatever it is, that's not, I'm sorry, but it's not machloket l'shem shamayim. So we have to be very, very, very careful. Our job is to really reflect the midos of the avos. We were chosen. And we got to get all 7 midos right. That's a lot of work to do. Because we're the end. We're the last generation. We're the generation that's waiting for the getting rid of the Yevusis. We've got to get rid of the Yevusis, right? What are the Yevusis? The Yevusis are the ones, you know what an avus is? An avus is a trough where you put food for animals. Think of the Beis Hamikdash, a place where we used animals to serve Hashem in the most highest dignified way, versus putting out the slop so the animals can feed themselves. The inyan of being like a behemoth, as opposed to being an adam, the tzuras adam, right? The avus is the feeding bag, which I think overeating, and I'll confess, one of the issues, right? We all have issues with eating. The difference between living to eat and eating to live. Eating to live It means you want to feed your body nutritious things in the right amount. The Rambam writes about extensively. You're just feeding a fire, a low fire, you know. But if you dump all kinds of wood on top of a little fire, you're extinguishing it. And that's the issue of disease and so on and so forth. So part of Yerushalayim will be Zocha, is when we're mitakein the issue of avus. We have to make sure that we're eating to live and not living to eat, which I think is one of the big nisyonos of this generation. Hence, all the cookbooks, they don't have to put anything down. And I made Aliyah from Lawrence. It's the food capital of the kosher world. It is given, and I only noticed it in like the last 5 years since I made Aliyah because I wasn't sensitive to it. But I'll go back and you'll see a lamb chop on display as if it were the royal lamb chop. Dun da da da! It's packaged. It's showpiece. It's a lamb chop. It's not a diamond. It's not a pearl. No. I mean, people who have a taiva for food couldn't even dream up all the foods that are available. And in the Pesach hotels, forget about it. Right? We have a bit of an asayon in our generation to eat bihistapkus, to eat to live. And I think that's part of the final thing. In any case, I hope you understand we put together this interesting package of how the Bris Ben Abasarim, and that's really what the Bris Ben Abasarim means, is what's dividing us is these 7 nations. It's dividing us from Hashem, it's dividing us from Hashadar, dividing us from the Torah, and hopefully we'll be miskaber, we'll zocha to the proper kinyan hamidos, and we'll be zocha to see the real nachala of Nar Mitzrayim ad Nahar Pras. Oh yeah, my Shalom Bayis story. Should we stay on the air for the Shalom Bayis story? Oh my goodness. Well, you know, one of the big factors for Shalom, go back on the air. Okay, I'm going to go back on the air. I have been working on a essay.
The title of today's shir is Chesed,
Quiet.
Chatas.
Okay, pay attention.
The kindness of the nations.
Okay, so Rav Volba writes in his Kuntras HaChasanim. There's a notebook for Chasanim that he has. Are you aware of that? I wasn't aware of it, but somebody asked me to help translate it. So I've been working on it. And he says an interesting observation. He says that at the beginning of a young person's marriage, there's a sense that there's actually somebody who's willing to do something for me. You know, you're a bachar in yeshiva, you're trying to survive. You know what I'm saying? Well, you're going to get, you know, will I get a bed? Will I get a chavrusa? Will I get to eat? Or is it all going to be gone by the time I get to the table? You know, in a yeshiva, that they care for each other is not an issue. But when you're coming into a marriage and there's actually somebody to do something for you, he says they can get an inflated sense of ego. And they, you know, so what do they say? So it's a story about a guy who comes into the house and says, Ezu isha kshera, ha'osa ritzon ba'ala. Who is a kosher woman? She who does the will of her husband. So he goes to Rosh Hashiva and says, she's not doing my will. You know what I'm saying? What should I do? It's not working out, right? She's not doing my will. So the answer to that, I'll just tell you by way of story. When the couple was dating, so he's, you know, I'm sort of wanting it my way. I'm the king of the castle, do my will. So there's a guy who was dating in a certain yeshiva. I never know the fellow. And he was very, very devout to his learning. And he was very emistic guy about tshuva. And they went on a date, and the girl says to him, so what do you plan to do for parnasa? And he says, pas b'melech tochal. You eat, you know, bread and salt, and you sleep on the ground. I mean, that's what it says in the Mishnah. You should. Needless to say, she didn't want to continue. So they went. The next day, gets a tap on the shoulder from the Rosh Hashiva. I need to speak with you. Goes to the office and sits down. This is Rabbi Leib Bakst, Zeichat Tzaddik Rosh Hashiva of Detroit. And he says, did you just tell a girl that, that you plan on just, relying on pas melech tochel? He says, yeah. I said, I did. Isn't that what it says in the Mishnah? So she returned to him and said, that's for you, not for her. That's for you. You have to be willing to live in a selfless way, not in a selfish way. You know what I'm saying? And therefore, but for her, you got to make sure she has everything that she could possibly want. And if you can't afford it right now, you have to want it. You have to want her to want it. You have to fagin her. And you have to try to get it for her. But you can't go around saying pas melech tochel. So again, that's the idea of Chesed Leumim, Leumim Chatas. In the marriage is the real chance to apply that idea. It's not about you. It's not about you, but what are you doing lezulas? What are you doing for your spouse? And if you do focus on doing for your spouse, then that would be one of the yisodos that we need to teach young people. I don't teach anybody, you guys, but with these young people that in this generation, to be careful not to fall into the trap. Don't be an Ephron, be an Avraham. And that's really what it is. Okay. All right.